Hello everyone, and thank you for attending our webinar, MVision Cloud, Securing Data from Device to Cloud. I am your host, Mindy Stubbs, Demand Generation Coordinator here at Optiv. Before we get started, a few items of housekeeping. First, this webinar is being recorded and will be available in the next few days for on-demand viewing. You can see here on the console that we have several resources you can use during or following the webinar. This includes some resources we think you'll find valuable when it comes to your security program. We have our full speaker bios and a Q&A chat box. You'll also find all these same widgets on your toolbar as we scroll to the bottom of the screen. Regarding the Q&A chat box, we will have someone monitoring the chat box throughout the webinar and during the Q&A period. However, we may not get to every question. If we don't answer your question, we will follow up after the webinar. Let me take a quick moment to introduce our speakers, Michael Fuller and Denon Monks. Michael Fuller is an enterprise architect on Optiv's partner research and strategy team and has been with Optiv for over 7 years. Michael is dedicated to the McAfee products and puts his attention and expertise towards working with the pre-sales team to help them understand particular McAfee products, conduct proof of concepts for pre-sales and/or clients, and handles pre-sales McAfee escalations. Denon Monks has over 20 years of experience in IT, with the last 15 years focused on security. This includes 3 years in Cryptology Lab evaluating PIN entry devices. Denon enjoys post-sales as much as pre-sales and has spent 10 years doing professional services. He holds a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering and a minor in computer science, along with several other cybersecurity certifications. Now let's get things started. I will hand it over to our first speaker, Michael.
Thank you very much, Mindy. Let's go ahead and dive into this. First of all, let's talk about the agenda. We're going to talk about the Optiv overview, our relationship with McAfee, and then I'm going to hand it over to Denon, and he'll talk about the MVision Cloud overview, data protection, and then we'll do Q&A. For Optiv services, we're the best in class in security consulting and delivery teams. We definitely want to make sure that you get the maximum return on your technology investments with the appropriate alignments for your objectives. We also combine with McAfee's integrated security platforms. But here at Optiv, we deal with 3 phases, really, and we call them plan, build, and run. So I'll break those down just briefly. First of all, we have plan, and within that phase, we can identify and help you select the appropriate technology for your business so that it's not just solely on you. We offer a third-party opinion, if you will. We also provide proof of concepts. That's important because a lot of companies, they don't want to implement a technology within their environment before they see what it actually does, and it validates, what they're wanting it to accomplish in terms of features and functionality. We provide that. We provide that hands-on as well within their environment in a short term so they can see it. It's not a full-blown. And also we help them design their technology implementation. Again, we provide that third-party validation coming in to help them brainstorm about what's best for their design and architect. Second phase is build. We provide quick starts. That we go in, we do a quick implementation, we get it started, and then we hand it off to you. It provides that knowledge base of going in where you don't have to do that initial work, and then we give it to you to handle it from then on out. We also do full implementations. We go in there and we just knock it out from the beginning to end. Along with that, we document the whole way, and we provide knowledge transfer, which is very key. We don't leave you hanging once we leave. But by the time we're out of there, you understand what's going on, you understand why, and you have the documentation to back that up. We also provide migration. It's not uncommon that we go in there and folks are on an existing platform that want to go to McAfee. So we go in there and we provide that migration path, again, document along the way and knowledge transfer in real time. and for resale stuff as well. We go in there, we help you determine what the best fit in your situation is and help you when that time comes. And the last phase is run. Upgrades, that's a biggie. We go in there and we help upgrade, your software, your hardware. A lot of times they just don't have the time to do that or the knowledge. So we'll come in there and we'll provide that upgrade. We'll give them insight on how to do that. Health checks are key. Done many of those in my many years doing this. And health check is again, third-party validation to come in there. There's nothing like a new set of eyes looking at where you're at in terms of your policies, your architecture, how you're doing things to say, oh, wait a minute, what about this? And we document those things and we provide a report for you. I can't tell you how many times that I've sent out an email. Before I did, I've read it 20 times. Looks great to me. Send it out, and I get 3 or 4 people, hey, you misspelled this word. Hey, what about that? Your buddies kind of chide you with that. Well, I'm like, oh, how did I miss that? It's the same thing with health checks. Companies, they're used to looking at it, maybe the same set of eyes, and it just doesn't stick out to them. When we come in there, things stick out. Optimization. One of the main issues with technology is how it's configured. You get clients say, listen, this thing's not working like it's supposed to or like we expected it to. We go in there and we say, well, it's not optimized to its fullest capability. You're not using this feature. You're not using that feature. Why is this turned off? Those types of things. We go in there and we provide insight about how to optimize this technology so it is the most efficient running machine out there for them, and it's getting the most work for what they're trying to get. Integration, we can provide new or existing integration products. Our McAfee products integrating with your products. SIA is a big key there. Device management, we can co-manage SIM with you and also provide the endpoint production platform for the managed stuff. At Optiv, we have just a huge client base. We have more than 15,000 clients, including, not all inclusive, but including, you got manufacturers, 150 of those. We got retail distribution companies, federal agencies, healthcare, airlines. We even have footwear manufacturers. I mean, let's face it, you may be wearing some shoes that's protected by viruses right now, or for viruses. That's a biggie. Now, our Optiv McAfee partnership is important to us. It's important to McAfee. We have a very strong relationship with them, have throughout the years. We're number one in partner capabilities. Optiv has more McAfee expertise than any other partner. That includes pre-sales, post-sales, and managed. We're proud of that. But we're the fastest growing resale capability. So our commitment to McAfee and vice versa has grown more rapidly than any other partner. Again, we've worked hard on that. We think it's very important, especially if you're going to support their product and be that escalation point for them. And also we have an extensive delivery team. We have around 50 consultants that's capable of delivering multiple McAfee solutions, and there's a plethora out there of McAfee stuff. Just a few awards. North America Partner of the Year, we're Elite Partner and VP of the Year, named by Gartner as Top Security Consultant Provider. That's important to us. We're not caught up in the names, but we sure like it when we get these accolades. We provide on-site consulting. I did this for years, and I know that we're relevant out there. Clients love us. They ask us to come back, and again, it's because we pride ourselves on being the best we can to help the client out. That's important to us. We assess and review the architect and design. We provide the demo and proof of concepts. We provide implementation and displacement, when I mentioned a little bit earlier. We provide that integration and automation and optimization, which is very important for on-site consulting. and that compliance and security policy management is important as well. Let me share this. I know that what I hear a lot, again, is lack of resources. They don't have the time to do this type of stuff. That's why it's important for them that we're able to come on site and provide all these various things for them to make them as best as they can be moving forward. We also are ENS Migration Experts. ENS is the next-gen technology. The legacy VSE and HIPS and Site Advisor, those are good products, but they have their flaws and whatnot, but ENS is just leaps and bounds above that. It combines those three technologies into one. And it's important. A lot of companies are seeing that, and they're moving over to this in a migration, but they're not sure how to do it. They're concerned about policies that they have on the legacy stuff. Well, we can come in and take care of that. We have 10 consultants. It's probably a little bit more now that's dedicated exclusively to the McAfee ENS migration. We're the winner of the McAfee RFI ENS Migration Award. That makes us authorized to complete these on behalf of them, on behalf of McAfee. And we have a 100% customer satisfaction rate, something we're very proud of. We also have managed solutions. We can host and co-host solutions. That's an internal SOC we have, customer premise, cloud-based, endpoint products, appliance-based, such as IPS, SIM, etc. We can run and maintain services such as patch management, environment maintenance. Listen, let's face it, clients hate to do patch management. It's a pain. Well, we can take that pain from you and do it for you. Same thing with event monitoring response. Going back to what I said earlier, lack of resources. I mean, it's hard to get in there and look for anomalies for events and stuff like that. And then when you find one, to make that response in real time or as close as you can to real time, well, we can provide that for you to be able to give you peace of mind while we're monitoring that type of stuff and responding to it as well. And we can, in keeping with responding, we have our user support for Tier 1 and 2, so we can do ticketing, tracking, reporting, and whatnot for these various types of incidents that are occurring. Lastly, let's talk about the lab. So our lab within Optiv can be accessed from anywhere via a secure VPN. In terms of the Optiv employees, they have the capability of learning the entire suite of McAfee products unhindered. That keeps them sharp. When there's a new functionality that comes out or a new version or a product, they can get in there and make sure they understand it well before going out into the field. Provides those hands-on demos and training sessions with the customer as well to show them what's going on. Now, for any Optiv customers, it provides that remote proof of concept. Now, I talked about earlier about the proof of concept. A lot of customers don't want to do that in their own environment. They want to see what it's like outside of their environment, the functionalities, if it's going to meet their needs and whatnot. Well, we provide that remotely. Doesn't touch their environment. They're able to see how it works, how effective it is, all the different functionalities and whatnot, so that they can kind of mirror that over to their environment. We can provide use cases. They'll come to us and say, hey, we've got this, maybe it's an odd use case. We don't want to do it in our environment because we don't want to break anything. What can you do to help us? Well, we got a lab for that. Just let us know what kind of use case you need, and we can pop in a lab and show you how that works there. And again, we can showcase the McAfee product integration. So from this point, that is all I have. At the end, there'll be some Q&A if you have any. And at this point, I'd like to hand it off to Mr. Denon.
Excellent. Thanks, Michael. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mindy. My name is Denon Monks. I'm a Systems Engineering Manager for the West for the McAfee MVISION Cloud product. This came over as part of the Sky High acquisition earlier this of 2018, and has since then been very quickly integrated into the broader McAfee portfolio. I think what we're going to want to do is quickly run through some some of the initial groundwork to explain the whole premise and reasoning behind the need for a cloud access security broker or some of these cloud-native data security controls. And then we'll get into some of the specifics around how MVision Cloud helps you achieve those different use cases directly from the cloud. And then finally, we'll jump over and do a quick demo and show some of these different features and functions live. So quick touch base on the McAfee promise. You know, we, at the forefront of our mind, really want to protect both consumers and enterprises from cybersecurity threats. And the vision here is a device-to-cloud security strategy that encompasses data no matter where it goes, no matter where it's processed, no matter where it's stored. So when we look at the older paradigm of how security has worked in the last 20 years, it was really about a network perimeter. As long as you secured that perimeter, data going in, data going out, people accessing that data, the different devices within that perimeter, you were in pretty good shape. But since then, the data boundaries have changed. We no longer have just the network boundary, these different forms of SaaS services, either consumer, business, or even IaaS-PaaS, where we're transforming and moving a lot of our infrastructure out to these different hosted environments, these different cloud services. As such, our data boundaries have expanded out to encompass these different cloud services. They're no longer, it's not within our network boundary, but they still are data boundaries. We expect our data to reside there. Some data may be too sensitive to stay there, but on some level or another, we expect company data to be processed or stored there. And as of currently, roughly about 97% of organizations use cloud services in one form or another, be it a truly sanctioned service like Office 365, a permitted service, maybe like a business partner's Dropbox, for example, or even a shadow service, someone's own personal Gmail or Google Drive. Another major security concern that we've seen with the adoption of the cloud is the rise of unmanaged devices. Companies are relying more and more on users using their own devices to access sanctioned services and company resources. And considering those devices are personal in nature, data disseminated to them can't be reconciled by the company down the road, and therefore can result in a lot of situations where potentially sensitive data is lost to the organization. As you can see, roughly 87% of companies want their employees to be able to use their own devices. This could be both a personal device completely unmanaged or potentially one with an MDM type solution on it. So this shift to the cloud has really resulted in a lot of new cloud-first enterprise challenges. Data can be created, stored, used, and then deleted entirely in the cloud, bypassing all your classic network security controls. As well, once data is out there in the cloud, it can move laterally east-west to different services, as well as different infrastructure as a service environments. So the idea of leveraging our existing network-based controls to provide full coverage across data security in the cloud just doesn't quite make sense. A really big piece of the new cloud paradigm, and one that's a major security control, or a security risk, I should say, is the idea of the shared responsibility model. I think as security professionals, we're all very aware that we're responsible for the data no matter where it goes. Right? We've been able to move a lot of our operations and uptime and resource allocation out to these different cloud services, but if we're putting data out there, we're still responsible for that data. But a lot of times people get confused about what other pieces they're responsible for. And you can see things like endpoint protection, identity access, and then as you move over to IaaS, things like application level controls and network controls also fall into the realm of the customer's responsibility, not the cloud provider's responsibility. And this leads to an interesting prediction from Gartner, that by 2020, roughly 95% of all cloud security failures are going to be the customer's fault. This could be a miscategorization or classification of data. This could be a misconfiguration on the IaaS or SaaS offering, allowing some type of wide open control. For example, an S3 bucket with a wide open ACL with public read, for example. And so what this begs is a need for some different cloud-native control that classic network controls can't transcend. And where we are currently with visibility and control is the idea that we really have still a lot of that same control when it comes to our internal boundaries, but a complete lack of visibility and lack of control when it comes to that SaaS, PaaS, and IaaS different cloud services through our classic network-based controls. And this gave rise to the idea of a cloud access security broker, and this is what we call MVision Cloud, which is a part of the whole MVision product suite, which includes the EPO, management server, our endpoint, mobile, and EDR. And what the idea here really is, as a premise, is to allow business to accelerate out to the cloud, allowing them to extend a lot of the same classic data security controls that they'd expect within their network boundary, data loss prevention, visibility, governance, access control, even threat protection and UEBA, out to these different cloud services natively. And you can see here, through the MVision Cloud product, we have the ability to provide visibility across multiple cloud services and policy across multiple cloud services. This becomes a single control point to aggregate this data, do research on this data across all the different cloud services, either individually or as a whole, and then apply policy across all of them together. And this applies not to just data in real time via north-south channels, but also data that's resident out there or created natively out in the cloud through east-west channels. So data at rest, data uploaded, data downloaded, and shared cloud to cloud. And finally, really is one of the big tenets of our product, the MVision Cloud product, is no user friction. We'll talk about this a little bit more, but the MVision Cloud product in itself does not require an agent. We're able to integrate with all the best-in-breed agents out there. If for some reason you don't have an agent that you'd want to use, of course, McAfee has a best-in-breed one that can fill a lot of the security controls there, including other pieces that aren't kind of classically CASB space. And so this is the kind of classic Gartner 4 pillars of a CASB at the bottom. You've got visibility and governance, which helps you shrink your risk surface at a macro level by providing visibility into all the different cloud services you use, and through potential risk scoring, shrink that cloud service exposure and allow only the ones that fall within your acceptable use policy to be accessed, whether they're sanctioned or permitted. We can get into data security controls, things like encryption, DRM, or geolocation tagging, managed, unmanaged devices, a lot of different access control pieces. The compliance pillar is very synonymous with data loss prevention, applying different governance and compliance control sets, PCI, HIPAA, SOX, and going out and looking for not only misconfigurations within those services that would be in violation of those different compliance rule sets, but also looking for specific data that falls within the PCI or HIPAA realms. And then finally, threat protection, keeping track of all this different activity that's going in there and getting good baselines of what's expected, what's unexpected, and bubbling up anomalous activity, compromised accounts, or potentially insider threats. And you can see here that the platform is meant to transcend across all your SaaS, your AS, and your PaaS, as well as your custom applications. So it's not just publicly available. If you're hosting applications in your own DMZ or within your own IaaS environments, you can extend these MVision controls out to those as well. And through this platform extensibility, through our CASB Connect program and our custom apps, that's how we're able to onboard these new API integrations and these new proxy integrations very quickly. You can see here the long-tail SaaS applications are essentially ones at the farther end of the adoption curve. And finally, as part of the McAfee attach, which is very exciting, all the different third-party integrations that are available via DXL and all the ways we can tie that together to not only McAfee solutions, but also other solutions out there. Really, it goes to the whole idea of McAfee's, win together and work together mentality. A little bit about data protection specifically with MVision Cloud, and then we'll move into the demo. So the framework that the MVision Cloud product provides really gives you visibility and control across all your different devices, managed or unmanaged. So the idea here is to provide ubiquitous control and visibility and policy across your managed devices, your unmanaged devices, people on network, people off network, people going to shadow services or going to sanctioned services. We're going to do that through different layers of controls as a multi-mode CASB, be it API integrations as well as proxy. And SkyHigh really makes a focus on using the right controls for the right use cases. So with visibility, you can see there's a number of different types of context that we can pull in and start to categorize and keep track of for not only data content analysis, but also context analysis. So where people are connecting from, how often they're doing it, who they're doing it with, what type of device they're connecting from, what type of workload that looks like, what type of data they're handling. what the user's role is. All these different pieces can feed different elements of the MVision Cloud platform. SaaS application. We'll talk about 5 primarily here, but there are a few others that you can ask questions about later if you're interested. One of the first ones people have, the biggest use cases that we see people come to McAfee for to help a CASB is data loss prevention and collaboration control in the cloud. A lot of organizations have enterprise DLP solutions in-house that work for data at rest within their network, for network DLP transcending out of their egress point, and even endpoint DLP. But they have a big blind spot to data that's stored in cloud services or potentially created directly in cloud services, or that's transferred via collaboration east and west. As a CASB, the MVision Cloud product has a native integration via API with these different cloud services. It can handle that traffic out of band. This allows for one, a very nice end-user experience because there's no proxy between the end-user agent and the cloud service, but it also is able to provide a much wider breadth view of data going in and out of that cloud service. An API doesn't care whether that device is managed or unmanaged, whether the user's on network or off network. It can apply controls across all the different activity, regardless of its origin. Another big one is to put controls around unmanaged devices. So you can see a couple examples of encrypting data for unmanaged devices, applying DRM controls. But a big portion of it is just making that initial identification. Right? Is this a managed device? Are they part of the domain? Do they have an endpoint agent that we expect to see there? Are they coming from on network? Right? And then applying controls based on that distinction. Could be to, again, apply encryption controls or DRM. It could also be just to outright block all downloads. Let's ensure that unmanaged devices, sure, can connect to Office 365, but can't download any attachments from Outlook Web Access, for example. Moving from content over to context, we have the idea of user behavior analytics. This is where we can start to apply machine learning, artificial intelligence, and look for and bubble up abnormal behavior. And then finally looking for different types of malware and threats out there in the cloud. MVision Cloud has both signature-based analysis through McAfee's GTI engine, as well as heuristics-based analysis for zero-day analysis with the McAfee Gateway Anti-Malware engine, the GAM engine. And you can see these different controls apply to all the different SaaS apps that the MVision Cloud product integrates with. Now, moving back over to the shared responsibility model, you can see here, as we transcend from SaaS to PaaS to IaaS, the responsibility only grows. Of course, we're responsible for data, and all those different control vectors I showed in the last slide make a lot of sense for SaaS, but they obviously make a lot of sense for IaaS as well. You've got workloads out there that would be potentially storing sensitive data or being misused or storing malware. You've got different types of repositories like S3 buckets, Azure Blob Storage, but you also have other different elements that apply harder to an IaaS environment than they would a SaaS environment. Things like misconfiguration, provisioning sprawl, and then some of the classic ones we talked about like UEBA and malware. So on the misconfiguration side, we're able to benchmark environments against CIS level 1 and level 2. We can do PCI analysis, different forms of HIPAA or SOX. Not only look at the back-end configuration, but also look at what's being stored out there in terms of S3 buckets or Azure Blob Storage, if that content is sensitive, for example. Provisioning sprawl to focus on people spinning up resources outside of their expected geolocations, using those resources and not only notifying but putting hard controls and remediating those environments. Just like with SaaS, UEBA has a big home in IaaS. We want to keep track of not only the users that are going out there, but potentially these resources themselves. Have they been compromised? Has the resource itself been compromised? Is it spreading data across? Is it crawling through other workloads, for example? UEBA, it makes a lot of sense here on the entity side to do behavioral analytics. And then finally, malware. Malware is definitely not, siloed to just SaaS environments. You can be applied to the different repositories out there in IaaS as well as the different workloads and have them affected. SkyHigh can constantly monitor those environments and not only remediate them, but potentially scan them or quarantine them as a response. And finally, as a newer feature, we're adding network segmentation and security. This allows us to look at not only the outside in, but between the different workloads there, and apply that to not only kind of classic EC2 type workloads, but also containers and different forms of serverless compute power. So the MVision Cloud in action. It's truly a device-to-cloud story. You can see that MVision has integration both to the on-premise world to help you leverage your Active Directory, use your existing web gateways, whether they're from McAfee or from a different vendor, API integrations and proxy integrations directly with those SaaS and PaaS and IaaS services to provide both out-of-band controls and inline controls, and then make sure that as data is going in and out of these different vectors, that you can apply both content analysis and context analysis to do things like data loss prevention, threat protection, shadow IT visibility, and control. So from an earlier slide, we saw that there was a real lack of visibility and lack of control on the unmanaged devices, as well as SaaS and IaaS environments. Leveraging something like MVision Cloud gives us that ubiquitous visibility and control across the different users' data, regardless of where they go. It gives them a very uniform feel across internal resources versus external resources. Few marketing slides here to end. We were the only CASB that was sort of the Triple Crown winner here against these three different analyst reports. You can see we're in the top right for all three of them. And by far and away, the Gartner Peer Insight Customer Choice winner in terms of reviews by real actual owners and operators of the MVision Cloud product. So to end here, let's discuss the 5 key differentiators for the MVision Cloud product. McAfee Sky-High CASB is the only CASB with complete coverage across SaaS, PaaS, and IaaS from all the different channels in which a client can connect. This includes API, reverse proxy, forward proxy, and as well some proprietary pieces like real-time API for collaboration control. We're also the only frictionless CASB out in the market. From the get-go, the story has always been to leverage and extend existing investments. So if you already have a best-in-breed agent, bring that to the table, and we can add in the necessary pieces to complete an overall data security strategy natively in the cloud. As part of that frictionless approach, and from a get-go being a very high focus on APIs and cloud-based reverse proxies, we've grown this CASB into a true cloud scale, processing over 2 billion events per day for different customer environments and meeting the SLAs in the 3-minute time range. The leadership driving the team is some of the best in breed. We've got a lot of coverage from both an encryption standpoint in terms of our cryptology board, as well as different founders and key executives. And finally, the open ecosystem is something that we really pride ourselves on, between the CASB Connect program, where you can onboard new APIs very quickly, DXL to share different types of threat intelligence, and then the overall network effect of gathering information from all these different vectors. We can truly provide a best-in-breed open ecosystem.
Great, thanks, Denon. So now we will do the demo portion. I'll give Denon a quick second to set everything up on his screen, and then after that we will move into the Q&A. So get your questions ready.
Great, thanks, Mindy. All right, let's take a look at some of these cloud-native data security controls in action. I'm going to go ahead and log into my sanctioned instance of Office 365 here. You can see I'm logging in with skyhighdemo30.net, which is my own, customer domain here. Microsoft realizes, okay, that's a federated domain. I don't handle that authentication. I pass it off over to the identity provider. In my case, I'm using Okta here, but really any SAML compliant IDP is going to work. And so what you'll see is when the user logs in here successfully, instead of going right back to the cloud service, they get redirected through McAfee's Sky-High's control point. So what we've done is we've leveraged that authentication flow to put a real-time proxy in play. At this point, we're interrogating this device to prove whether it's a low risk, medium risk, high risk incident or user or a managed or unmanaged device. In my case, I'm doing kind of the lowest common denominator here and checking for a device certificate. In this case, because the device has a certificate, we're going to give the user direct access back to the cloud service. The idea being here that because they're on a managed device, something that's corporately provisioned, there's compensating controls and there's no need to keep an additional inline hop. One, it's not a great end user experience to have that inline hop, and as well, it's not actually technically part of Microsoft's acceptable use policy. So we'll go ahead and log in, and what we can see here is some of the API controls, our out-of-band controls in action. So if I hop over to OneDrive, I can choose to upload a couple files here. The file here, user account info, has 2 social security numbers in it. Based on the policy that I've set in my McAfee Sky-High tenant, anything with 2 or more socials needs to be quarantined. 1 social is allowed. It's within the acceptable normal workflows for my company, or my fictitious company. But 2 or more is kind of outside those realms. In those cases, we don't want that type of data to be stored in the cloud. Behind the scenes, Sky-High is constantly enumerating actions out there and taking action on them. And you can see already we've taken action and quarantined that file. We've sent an out-of-band notification letting that user know that the file was quarantined, and as well replaced the original file with a tombstone message, giving the user visual feedback that we had to remove that file. You can see there it was a very, very quick reaction via API. Across the board, we offer 3 minutes or less across all our API connections, but in practice for things like Office 365, a lot of times we can react in less than a minute here. Another really important thing to point out is the same behavior works for content created directly in the cloud. So for example, if I pull up a Word Online and say this is SSNs, and I'll put 2 more in here. Wait for that to save off. I'm going to close this, and if I hop back to OneDrive here, what we'll see is document.docx also gets quarantined. This is another really powerful portion of what an API can do. It's agnostic to the vectors in which clients connect. So whether someone's doing this via browser, native app, mobile app, on the network, off the network, from a managed device, from an unmanaged device, API can see all of those different actions behind the scenes. Another really important piece too is collaboration control. So we've been dealing mostly with up north-south traffic, and you can see that file has been quarantined right there, the tombstone message. So when we're talking about north-south traffic, people uploading and downloading the service, when we talk about content creating directly in the cloud, those are 2 main ways that data is used and shared in the cloud. The other is via east-west. So potentially your users sharing out files via shared links or collaboration, or potentially external parties or contractors connecting into your sanctioned instance of Office 365 and sharing files with you that way. And so just like with the other 2 vectors, we can apply DLP controls in conjunction with those contextual collaboration controls. So for example, if I go ahead and try to share this internal document out to a Gmail, this is where McAfee Sky-High will employ some intellectual property, and we use our real-time API to block that collaboration. You can see that happen just about instantly from an end-user perspective, and as well, the private sharing here at the bottom right never changed to shared. What's so great about this is that it enforces a true data boundary. And if it takes McAfee Sky-High 30 seconds for us to quarantine on an upload, that's generally acceptable from an information security standpoint because it's still within your sanctioned service. It hasn't left your data boundaries as an organization. But the second someone creates a shared link on that file or creates a file collaboration or folder collaboration, they've essentially poked a hole in that data boundary. In that case, even 30 seconds is too big of a window of exposure. So we've taken a look at mostly the controls of API via a managed device. Let's real quickly hop over and take a look at what it looks like when we're on an unmanaged device. So I'm going to use Firefox here because I removed that certificate from its store. And so this browser will act essentially as an unmanaged device. I'll head out to the same place as before, world.office.com, log in just like I would. I'll get redirected over to Okta as expected. What you'll notice when I log in this time is that I'm given direct access, and the user has the ability to look at their different apps, use Word Online, Excel Online. But if you're looking up at the top, you can see that I've actually kept the McAfee Sky-High cloud proxy in line. So what we've done here is we've recognized that this is an unmanaged device. It's a higher risk scenario. So we're going to still give them access to maybe check Outlook or use Word Online, but we'll ensure that they can't pull any data down to this device. So I head over to head back over to OneDrive here. I can take a look at internal doc, use Word Online to look at the file, potentially modify the file, even share it internally with other users. But if I hop back over here and try to download this, you'll notice instead I download a Sky-High block PDF. Another customizable message, letting the user know that, hey, we respect that you're trying to get your work done, but you're on a personal device, so you can't pull any data down to this. You've got to maintain Office 365 as that system of record. So we've taken a look at two of the different vectors in which we can protect devices, both through a cloud-based proxy and API, and then for managed and unmanaged devices. Let's take a look at what some of that information looks like on the McAfee Sky-High console. You can see at a high level, we've got a number of different sections here. We can look at overall usage across SaaS, IaaS, and Shadow here, apply governance in a lot of different ways through closed-loop remediation and through proxy-based controls. Some of the examples you've seen here are all based on different DLP policies and access control policies. We can also, for IaaS, get into configuration audit policies, like I mentioned earlier, things like CIS level 1, level 2 checks, take automatic remediation actions on them, like kicking off DLP scans, and then even locking down unrestricted ports, for example. All of that information, when events trigger those different policies, are held here under our policy incidents and our policy incident summary. I'll focus here mainly on policy incidents because this is where we'll see the two DLP incidents we generated earlier. Focus on policy violation here on the left. For OneDrive. And you can see here's the block collaboration, the document that we created natively in the cloud, and the one that was quarantined. A really important piece of data loss prevention as a program. It's one piece to be able to analyze that content, look for it, trigger policy correctly, and catalog it, but it's also important for a remediator to be able to come back through and quickly put eyes on it and make a true positive or false positive distinction. McAfee Sky-High supports both secure match highlighting with the feature below, but also obfuscation. So what we're doing is we're giving a remediator enough context to make that distinction very quickly, whether it is a true positive or a false positive, but at the same time not exposing a new sensitive value to that remediator. So we'll stop the demo there. I'll pass it back to you, Mindy. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Denon. That was a fantastic demo and presentation. So we will now be moving on to the Q&A portion of this webinar. A quick reminder to our audience that you can submit your questions using the Q&A chat box on your screen. So it looks like we've got a couple questions already in. Let's see. What differentiates you from your competitors, Denon?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. There's a few different players in the CASB space. I think within a year's time to maybe 2 years' time, we'll see a very similar approach from all the different vendors. Securing data in the cloud is definitely a layered cake. There is no silver bullet in terms of leveraging API or forward proxy or reverse proxy or agent. It takes all those different vectors to really provide a complete data security platform for different SaaS and IaaS environments. I think where we differentiate is how we started our journey. Some of the other vendors started with more of a forward proxy approach. Some of them started with a reverse proxy. Sky-High or McAfee MVISION Cloud really focuses on an API first and then leveraging the proxy where necessary. So from the get-go, we've built a very scalable, robust, enterprise-ready platform that's capable of handling, as I mentioned before, over 2 billion events per day via API from all these different environments, and as well handling a proxy infrastructure around the cloud. One of the exciting things from our product that I've seen is with the recent acquisition by McAfee, it's given us access to the entire cloud gateway infrastructure that McAfee's been building for years, which includes 52 data centers around the world for your agent and forward proxy-based architecture. What we'll see is a lot of an integration come together between those two products over the course of late 2018 and 2019, and really give us a full, complete package across all the different integration channels.
That's great. Thank you for answering that. So how do you know when to use API, reverse proxy, or forward proxy?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think the best way to approach it is on the use case, as well as the pain in which the integration requires, right? The friction of that different integration. If you're dealing with sanctioned services, you're always going to want to get an API integrated if it's possible. An API gives an out-of-band control. It's really good for data loss prevention, for activity monitoring, for threat protection, and for that collaboration control. Has almost no friction, no end-user experience issues. So applying an API, if possible, is a great way to go. APIs, because they're integrated, to a sanctioned service, they're only going to work for those different cloud services in which you sanction, you have a license agreement with. Same idea here for a reverse proxy. A reverse proxy, really, in my mind, is used for unmanaged devices. You're able to leverage your authentication flow to a sanctioned service. It has to be a federated service, but you can put a reverse proxy in there to interrogate that device and determine if it's a managed asset or an unmanaged asset. And so that works really well for unmanaged devices to sanctioned services. And then finally, a forward proxy works really well for your shadow services, services that haven't been sanctioned by your environment. So when you're looking at a reverse proxy versus a forward proxy and which one to use, again, it's a layered cake. A reverse proxy only works for sanctioned services, but it can gather traffic from both managed and unmanaged devices. A forward proxy, on the other hand, works for shadow and sanctioned services, but can only be applied to a managed device. So really, depending on the scenario and what use case you're trying to take down, is indicative of which control to use.
Fantastic. Thanks. So this will be the last question that we'll answer during the webinar. If we do not answer your question, we will follow up on an email. So, Denon, do you support Citrix share files?
Yeah, that's a pretty specific question, but yes, that's one of the API integrations that we have natively through our platform. We can support both activity monitoring, threat protection, and data loss prevention via API for Citrix share file.
Great. Thank you so much. All right. Well, this actually concludes today's webinar, so I want to thank our awesome presenters, Michael and Denon, for joining us today, and all of you attending. We hope you found this presentation enjoyable, and a follow-up email will be sent to you shortly, which will include a link to review today's webinar. Thank you guys so much.